If you've just started your adventure riding journey or you're looking to get involved in the world of adventure, chances are you already feel overwhelmed. With so many bikes to choose from, expensive gear, and an absolute mountain of information to sift through online, it can make the whole process of starting out feel a little bit daunting. So this video is part one of what I consider to be the ultimate beginner adventure rider guide. Today, we're cutting through all of the nonsense to help you get started on your own adventure riding journey. What bike to choose, what gear actually matters, and what information you can ignore when you're just starting out. Now, I've been doing this whole adventure thing for a little while now, but when I started out, I went through the exact same issues that we will discuss in this series. So hopefully, I can pass on what I've learnt from my very own adventure riding journey and help fast track your way into this awesome world of two-wheel adventures. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Josh, and this channel is all about motorcycle adventure. The bikes, the gear, reviews, the adventures, and tips and tricks videos just like this one. So if any of that interests you, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the two-wheel adventure crew. I'd love for you to stick around. Now let's get into this video. Now first things first, adventure riding doesn't have to be a crossing of the Simpson Desert or a 3-week ride across the country. Most adventures for everyone are close to home, a day trip, or possibly an overnighter at a hotel or a pub. This is a great way for beginners to start out. For most beginners, adventure riding is usually gravel roads, fire trails, back roads, some light off-roading, nothing too crazy, and basically just riding to places that you couldn't reach on a normal street bike. To me, adventure riding is more about the journey than the difficulty of the ride. It's about the people you meet along the way and the things that you get to experience. And one of the biggest mistakes a lot of beginners make is thinking that they need the most expensive, flashiest bike with all of the fruit and expensive gear to go along with it to make sure they have a real adventure. It's just not the case at all. Now let's talk about the most important decision you will make when starting your adventure riding journey, and that of course is what bike to start off with. With so many adventure bikes available at the moment and more coming each and every year, it's no wonders riders can get stuck on this one. The options really are endless, but in my opinion, this is where a lot of people get it wrong. Now when it comes to selecting the engine size and weight, for most beginners, the sweet spot is going to be between 300 and 500 cc's. Now in Australia, we have LAMS, which stands for Learner Approved Motorcycle Scheme, also known as A2 licensing in Europe. So brand new riders cannot legally ride a bike with more than 650cc engines, which is important, but even more so when it comes to off-road riding. You can have all the power in the world, but it means absolutely nothing once you hit the dirt if you don't know what you're doing. All of that power is only going to hurt you, not help you. And the bigger the engine, the heavier the bike will be. The weight of an adventure bike is the most important factor for beginners in my opinion. Weight matters more than power when it comes to off-road. You may not notice the weight of a bike once you're moving along at a nice pace, but trust me, if the going gets tough and you are on a slow section of trail, you will notice the weight of your bike extremely quickly. And another thing to think about, if you drop it, can you pick it up by yourself? Because you will drop your bike at some point. When choosing your first adventure bike, make sure you ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what sort of riding do you want to do? Are you going to be majority off-road, or do you plan on doing a lot of on-road touring, hard trails, easy trails? Just put a list down of what kind of riding you really want to do, and that will help you with the second question of, does this bike suit that type of riding? Obviously, if you want to go out and do harder trails, you're going to want a lighter bike. If you want to do on-road touring, easy trails, it's going to be another completely different setup bike altogether. And the third and final question is, can you manage this bike if the going gets tough? If this bike's too powerful, too heavy for you, then it's probably not the bike that you're going to want. But make sure you answer all 3 of these questions truthfully, and if the bike you are thinking of doesn't tick all these boxes once you answer these questions, it's probably not the right bike for you just yet. Now I've put together a quick small list of a few options that I think are going to be great for beginner adventure riders. Now obviously there is no unicorn bike that's going to suit absolutely everyone in all types of conditions, but I think this list that I've made here is a great start point for beginners, and it should cover a wide variety of different terrains and different riding styles. Now this list isn't in any particular order at all, but first up, I've got the KTM 390 Adventure R, which I personally own. Secondly, I've got the Honda CRF 300L Rally. I've got the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. We also have the BMW F450 GS, which isn't out just yet, but looking at the specs, this thing might be a good beginner option. Then we also have the CF Moto MT 450. Now I have not ridden all of these bikes. I'm not going to jump into full detail on all their specs and why I think they're a good option. If you are after more detail of these bikes individually, I do have a couple of reviews on some of these bikes on my channel, so go have a look there if you are after more information. But these bikes are approachable for beginners. They're not overly powerful, but just enough power to have plenty of fun. And most importantly, they are on the lighter end of adventure bikes when compared to the bigger twin-cylinder engines, ranging from the 150 to 190 kilogram range or thereabouts. Now there is a bunch of other options to choose from, but these are just a few that spring to mind for me. There is no beginner out there that needs a 1200cc adventure bike right away. They are absolutely amazing bikes, don't get me wrong, but they're heavy, expensive to fix, and intimidating when you're learning off-road basics. There's zero shame in starting small and upgrading later once you feel like you're ready to step up. A few other good options that I'll mention here for other reasons are the Yamaha WR250R and the Suzuki DRZ 400E. Both of these bikes are reasonably cheap, easy to work on, and they are very reliable as well. I left these bikes out of the first list just because they need a little bit of extra work to become adventure bikes. They are sold as basically trail bikes, but with a little bit of work they can get the job done, as the Suzuki DRZ 400E did for me when I started my own adventure riding journey 5 or 6 years ago. But being trail bikes, they can be a little bit of a pain if you aren't a tall rider, with the seat heights on these being a little bit high for some. Now before anyone jumps down in the comments below and mentions a KTM 500 or even a Beta 480, just like my very own, which you've seen on the channel here before, I've left those kind of bikes off the list as well. They're basically motocross bikes with headlights put on the front. Now there's no denying how fun they actually are, but they just can't compete with some of those other bikes I mentioned on that list before when it comes to doing actual adventures where you've got to jump on the road for a little while. These bikes are just not comfortable at all for that, and some of them can be a bit of a battle to get luggage strapped on board for a really long adventure. Not to mention their very tall seat heights, shorter service intervals, plus their power to weight ratio is much higher than all those other bikes I mentioned before, which isn't great for beginners. But with all that being said, if you can make it work, a dirt bike can be a great way to learn all the basics before you move on to something a little bit heavier. The main thing to take away from all of this is be sure to pick a bike that you can manage when the going gets tough, and make sure that this bike is the best suited to the type of riding that you want to do. Now let's talk riding gear, and this is where I really want to try and save you some money. Now riding gear can be expensive, and there is a reason for it. You definitely get what you pay for with some of the items here, and safety is one thing you do not want to skimp on when it comes to riding. Now first up, and most importantly, you're going to want to protect your head. Now there's two ways that you can go here. You can go the standard adventure helmet with a visor of some kind, or you can run goggles along with the visor, which can be helpful when it's hot and you want to get some extra airflow. Then the second option that you have is to go with a more motocross style helmet along with some goggles. I myself started with the adventure style helmets, but more recently I've moved towards the motocross style helmets. Of course, it's all personal preference. Just be sure to test fit a few different options beforehand, as all helmets are different shapes and sizes, and you want to make sure you get the one that fits you best. Now up next is boots, and this is another item that I think you don't want to skimp on when it comes to protection. Don't slap on some old work boots you have lying around and think that they will do the job. They offer no real protection to your shins or ankles in a crash. Even a slow tip over could result in a twisted ankle without the right protection, so spend some money and get a decent pair if you can afford it. Now there are adventure style boots on offer, but I personally prefer to use a motocross or enduro style boot. They offer much more protection than the adventure boots. Now the adventure boots are great and they do have a place in the market. They are much more comfortable if you are off the bike a lot throughout the day and need to do some walking, but for the most protection possible, you can't beat an enduro motocross style boot. And lastly, to finish kitting yourself out to go riding, you're going to want a jacket, some pants, and some gloves as well. Now you don't need the most expensive setup with all of these items, but you do need some sort of armor and abrasion resistance. Shorts just won't cut it here. Now one of the most common ways to go is an adventure style jacket with removable layers. Now these jackets have inbuilt armor, or at least space to insert some, as well as having multiple liners that can be removed depending on the weather conditions that you'll have for the day. They do a good job for the most part, but personally I've gone to a separate setup after using jackets after a few years. I'd rather have completely separate layers now, an armor suit underneath, a moto riding jersey, and then an off-road jacket on top. If conditions are colder, I may throw in a thermal shirt or a puffer style jacket to keep some extra warmth in. I just find that the adventure style jackets are too bulky, and when conditions get hot, you lose your armor if you take that jacket off, hence the separate armor suit. But just make sure you weigh up these options and just have a think about what weather conditions you'll mostly be riding in around your local area. But as for the pants, I use mostly enduro style pants or motocross pants. Again, the adventure pants are quite bulky and usually an over the boot style, which I don't like as much. But for a long adventure where you will experience multiple conditions, the adventure pants can be a good option. And lastly, for the gloves, you don't want anything too big and bulky as it will affect your overall control of the brake and clutch levers. Motocross gloves are great for control, but they offer no real protection in a slide. Now I personally run that risk and I use motocross gloves for the control aspect, but there are gloves on offer similar to motocross gloves, but they do have some palm protection to help out in the event of a slide. Those style gloves are probably the best compromise between control and protection, but again, it's all personal preference. Just make sure you try and get the best boots, the best helmet, and the best armor that you can afford, and just make the rest work. It may be a little bit of trial and error to try and get your own ideal setup. A few other things to think about, of course, are knee braces and neck braces, both important items in a crash if you can afford them, but not essential. And also a backpack to carry some water and snacks when you're out on the trails is another good thing to look at getting. Now let me try and save you from some of the most common beginner mistakes. Now this is a common one, buying a bike that's too big and heavy. This is an easy one to fall into the trap from the marketing teams who get a pro rider to show us all what their bikes can do in the hands of the pros, making some beginners think that they'll be able to do the same thing, only to find out it's much harder than it looks. Make sure you go out and buy something that's lighter and learn the ropes first before you move on to any of the bigger, heavier bikes. Another common beginner mistake is seeing people packing too much weight onto their bike. Now every extra kilogram matters when packing for an adventure. Make sure you keep the weight down as low as possible to make the riding as enjoyable as possible. Now an easy tip I would say would be if you take something on an adventure and you don't use it, don't take it next time. Obviously forgetting about this when it comes to tools and spares, but everything else, try and use this rule. Another mistake that beginners can fall into from the marketing teams is when it comes to riding gear. Expensive doesn't always mean that it's going to be better. It's not always the case, so make sure that what you're buying suits your needs. More expensive doesn't always mean that it's going to be better for you. And one other common mistake that I see is people who wait to get that perfect setup before heading out on their ride. You don't need all the fruit to have a real adventure. Get out there, ride, and learn along the way. Find out what works on your bike and what works for you, and then find out what doesn't and build on it from there. Remember that the best adventure bike is the one that you've already got, so make the most of it. After all, adventure riding is a skill, not a purchase. You can have all of the best gear and the most expensive bike, but it means little if you don't know how to ride it properly. Make sure you start simple, ride often, learn as you go. You're going to have more fun this way. Now in the next video from this ultimate guide to adventure riding for beginners, I'll break down how to actually ride off-road as a beginner, the skills that matter, and how to build confidence without scarring yourself. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that one. If you are just starting out your adventure riding journey, comment below what bike you're riding or what bike you're thinking about buying. I'd love to know what you're thinking, and any other questions that you have for me, leave them down below as well. I'll try and answer as many as I can. But a massive thank you as always for watching these videos. Whether you're a beginner or a long-time adventurer, I really appreciate all of the support. Be sure to check out all of the links down below in the video's description. Support all of the channel's partners there, and as well as that, you can support the channel more directly by joining YouTube members to get early access to any videos, or you can grab yourself some merch or even a GPX file to head out on your own adventure ride. Ride safe on your own two-wheel adventures, and I'll see you all soon.